Welcome to the Self Revolution podcast. This is your weekly reminder to wake up to who the fuck you really are. I'm your host, Breanna Rae Blaney, and it is truly my honor to guide you on this journey of self-revolution and evolution. Join me as one by one, we collectively wake up to create a more harmonious, enlightened, and fulfilled world. Welcome back to the Self Revolution podcast. We're here for season 2, and I'm just so excited and grateful to be back with you. This has been quite a big transition period in my life, a season of rebirth and renewal, and I have officially, after over a decade working in the corporate world, left to start my own venture and be a full-time entrepreneur, and I'm just so excited to bring you on this journey with me and to really continue the conversations that we were having in season 1 around how do you come into your most alive, awakened, and embodied self? How do you really create and design a life that feels authentic to you? And how do you make an impact in the world in your own unique way? So this season, you can expect, solo episodes with me, but also a wide variety of guests. We're really going to be focusing on integrating all of these various aspects of life. And I'm just, I can't wait for what's in store. So thank you for being here. So today we're going to talk about this concept of choosing the other path. And this has really been the journey that I've been on for the past many years, but it's really the journey that we're all on, because the other path is essentially your own path. No one else is going to have the exact same journey as you. And as much as we like to try and compare each other's paths and compare what we're doing to others in our lives, you're on your own unique path. And the way to really cultivate fulfillment in life and joy and depth is by choosing yourself and by understanding who you really are and allowing yourself to follow your own unique path. But let's be honest, that's not always easy to do. And it takes a lot of courage and bravery and trial and error to also figure out what that path looks like. And so today we're going to talk about my journey that I've been on recently around choosing myself in a big, big way and taking a big leap of faith into very much the unknown. We're going to talk about what it means to really consciously create your life, make decisions for you to help you on your own path. And then some of the challenges that I've really faced and come up on when you start to really choose yourself. I think if we're honest with ourselves, it is a little bit of a rude awakening when we really ask, who is running your life? Are you consciously making choices, or are you allowing yourself to really be pulled in every which direction around what society really wants you to do or what you think you should be doing? So when you think about my path, there were some times where I would get these glimpses of creating more conscious choices. For instance, when I moved up to Boston after school, that was something that was a little bit out of the norm, was starting to veer towards taking a different choice than maybe I had been conditioned to previously. Or when I moved out to LA to be with my partner and took a big risk on that, that was definitely something that was a bit different, out of the norm. But the first time that I'd say that I really chose to do something different was when I created my first company called Raywear. And this is a custom swimwear company. Some of you may have seen it and been along the journey for that as well. But that really was the first time that I had stepped back and was really asking myself, what do I want to do? What does Breanna want to do? What does she want to create and birth and bring into this world? And when I started creating that company, it was a complete eye-opener into a portal of myself. I started to get creative and started getting into branding and design and all of these things that I had completely forgotten about. I had been working in finance and numbers and people and sales, but I had completely lost touch with that creative aspect of myself. And going through that journey of creating Raywear, it was fascinating how many different areas of myself that I started to uncover and started to learn about, but also how I started to really bump up against some of these challenges and these things that we'll talk more about later, but the self-doubt and the self-expression and anger and frustration and confusion and that whole journey of creating Rayware was filled with massive highs and also massive, massive lows. I was more stressed than I ever had been in my life. I was spending more money in unconscious ways than I ever had. And it really was quite a bit of a roller coaster ride. And that culminated once I had launched that company in this feeling of confusion, this feeling of misalignment. I put so much energy into creating this thing and it was out in the world and I didn't have the energy or the desire to keep it going and to keep pouring my heart and soul into it. And I was really faced with a very hard reality of wondering why I decided to do that in the first place. And that's when I really started to realize that even though I had taken somewhat of a different path, I hadn't necessarily created Rayware from a place of conscious creation. I didn't really know fully why I was doing that thing. In many ways, it was kind of an aspect of rebelling against what I knew I didn't want to do, but it didn't come from a place of true knowing and true alignment with my innermost self. And so that's what really started me down this deep journey of getting really clear and trying to understand who I really was at a deeper level. What was my life about? What is my life about? What is my soul's purpose? How does my body function? And that's really the journey I've been on for the past few years since Rayware is a deep self-exploration and a diving back into my practices of yoga and Ayurveda. Instead of just getting caught up in the hamster wheel again, I really took time to pause and get still and quiet with myself. I started spending weekends alone again, and I started spending more time in nature. I went to Costa Rica and traveled solo by myself and allowed myself just this time and this space to read and to journal and to be and to dive back into the things that I knew really had lit me up. Things like the Yoga Sutras and reading Young Pueblo and The Alchemist and these books that really do talk about the journey of life and what it really means to be here. And yet again, through these ancient texts, through things like the Gita and the Upanishads, I started to once again realize the power that all of these practices, the power that my initial yoga teacher trainings all had around being able to really consciously create your life. A huge part of this really centered around trying to understand and articulate my why of why I was really here and this concept of Dharma, which we'll talk about more later in this season around purpose. And it was kind of a humbling experience and journey to take that step back and to allow myself the space to really get clear. And at many points, it was also uncomfortable. I started seeing an art therapist, Laura, who I absolutely adore. And again, kind of diving into some of the patterns and the ways that I was unconscious around some of the things that I was doing. I did a lot of work around my relationship with money and healing some of the decisions that I had made with Rayware that I wasn't so thrilled about, honestly. And I also was, taking more yoga teacher training and Ayurveda and started doing sound healing. And once again, seeing how all of these different modalities were just these incredible tools to not only understand myself, but also help me be more in alignment with my own path. And I started to see in the corporate world how I was able to relate to my work in different ways. And all of this really started to help me come back to what it really meant to create or life and create decisions from a place of consciousness and not just doing something different for the sake of doing something different, but actually doing it from a place of alignment with who you are, your purpose, and what you know to be true. Deepak Chopra talks about the fact that we are infinite choice makers and that every single day we are making thousands of choices, yet often we are making those choices from a state of our innate conditioning. He talks about how, and I'll read this just to get it right. He says, even though we are infinite choice makers, we become bundles of conditioned reflexes that are constantly being triggered by people and circumstances into predictable outcomes of behavior. Most of us, as a result of conditioning, have repetitious and predictable responses to the stimuli in our environment. Our reactions seem to be automatically triggered by people and circumstances, and we forget that these are still choices that we are making in every moment of our existence. We are simply making these choices unconsciously. And I think this is just fascinating because it's true how we are infinite choice makers. Daniel Kahneman talks about how we make over 35,000 choices every single day. Yet 95% of those choices come from our system one brain, or the part of our brain that is more reactive in our subconscious. And I think what Deepak is really sharing there is that, yes, we are infinite choice makers, but we are responsible for actually creating consciousness around all of these choices that we are making every single day. And that consciously creating your life means getting really curious about why you're making these choices. So, this awakening, this self revolution really starts by cultivating awareness and awareness of all of these choices that you're making. And in this past few years, this has really been my number one goal of how do I cultivate more awareness of the choices that I am making in every single facet of my life, from my relationships to my well being and my health to my career. And how do I start to create immense alignment so that I'm able to step into my full potential as a human being? So I started getting really, really curious. And as it relates to my career, I started getting really curious around why I was in finance. Why did I care about being in this field? Was I there just for the money? Or was I there for a deeper meaning? And what I began to realize is that money is really this fascinating thing. It's this tool that really does have an immense reflection on our own relationship with ourselves. And as I was kind of simultaneously going down this path of understanding my own purpose, why I was here, which I define as helping people connect to the core of who they are, I was realizing how money really was this reflection in a way, or a portal into someone's relationship with themselves. And when I started to really realize that, I began to have this aha moment in terms of my work and the way I was interacting with financial advisors and people in the space, and how I was able to cultivate such a deeper sense of meaning. The more I dove into that, the clearer it became in terms of the opportunity that we really have as a population, as a human species, to really shift the way that we think about wealth, how we think about success, and bring more consciousness and awareness into that aspect of ourselves. Simultaneously, I was also realizing how challenging it can be to start down this path of self discovery, and how there really is not a place where you can go to holistically learn about yourself. Who am I and how do I function and how does my mind work? And it's wild to me that we're never taught that. It was crazy to me that I was taught all of these other things in school, but I was not taught the basics around how my nervous system works. And I've spent all of this time searching down all of these various paths to try and figure out how all of these things work together. And that is really what led me to the creation of Anya. And what I think is interesting about the way that this company has been birthed is that I would say that it's been birthed in a very non traditional sense. I have certainly felt inspired and had inklings to do something in this realm for quite some time. And I've been down a multitude of different paths around exploring different entrepreneurial ventures and all of these little avenues after, Rayware was that chapter was closed. But I didn't want to just take another path because it was a path to take. I really wanted to, again, consciously make a choice that I knew was right for me. And that takes time. And sometimes it doesn't happen immediately. And that's something I certainly found myself fighting myself with because I'm someone who does like immediacy and I like to make things happen and I like to take action. And it definitely was a process of patience and of listening and reflecting and being in a lot of spots that felt rather uncomfortable. One of the most challenging things to being in that was just having to get comfortable with being in the unknown, with not knowing, with not being sure, what was going to unfold, and to allowing myself to just be open to exploring a lot of different possibilities. It took me a long time to get clear of being able to really articulate my purpose and my why. It felt really messy when I was exploring kind of these different avenues and jobs and paths and getting turned down or having doors closed and having to really just stay true to the fact that I knew at some point all of these little pieces were going to make sense and that it was okay to kind of be in the mud and be in the messy middle and to just meet all of those things with presence and with love and that was really happening in every facet of my life too, from my career, my relationship, and yeah, just having to be okay being in the mess and being in the unknown a bit. So over the past year, I really have been sitting with this idea in a much deeper way of how can I create something, create a place where you can go to holistically learn about yourself, to integrate all of these various facets of life, from finance to relationships to health and well-being, and to really create a foundation, honestly, to consciously create your life. Because I know when you consciously create your life, you're going to impact the people in your life in a completely different manner. When you show up in your most authentic and alive self, that's going to allow your relationships to be so much stronger, your career, your colleagues to feel so much better, your work and the product of your work to be all that much more alive. And I know from a business sense, that's also what impacts the bottom line because I've seen it myself. When I started really feeling my own power and when I started unlocking kind of all of these portals into my own self and when I started eating in a way that was right for me and I started getting a handle on what was happening in my mind, everything in my career shifted. I was able to speak with so much more clarity, present in ways I didn't know were possible, and bring in more business, honestly, for myself and for the firm. And that's what I know is also possible for you. And I think at a more macro level, when we can all start to come in more alignment with our unique path, with your path, with your other path, then that is what really starts to collectively shift the world and make the world a more connected, harmonious, and enlightened place. So that is really the foundation of the Anya Institute for Human Revolution, my new baby, this new thing that we've birthed into the world. It really is an experiential learning and integrative training institute that is meant to help you come into alignment with who you really are, how you function, why you're here, and do that not only for yourself, but for the people in your life, for the businesses that you're a part of, for your work and your career, and ultimately for the world at large. I think often, people think, and I've been asked numerous times recently, when did you know that you were going to do this, or how did this come together? And I remember when I, made the decision, many of the decisions around Rayware, or just even through that entire journey, I was in this heightened state of stress. I was constantly sweating. I would wake up in the middle of the night in night sweats. And, my dad was joking with me when we were chatting the other week and asking me, are you waking up in the middle of the night? And what I am so proud of with how I've created Anya thus far and how we're building this business is that it's not around those things, and that I had no desire to create another company from a place of anxiety and fear and stress. That I only wanted to create another company and birth something new into the world if it was in full alignment and harmony with my path, and that it was being really consciously created. So the business plan was not my number one priority over the past year, over the past many years. What my number one priority was to simply listen. And this company was really created from a place of meditation, a state of meditation, of every single day showing up in my little meditation space and asking the world, the universe, consciousness, how I can be of service. How can I be of service? How can I come into harmony and into greater alignment with what I'm really here to do? How can I serve the people in my life and the people in this world in the most effective manner? And by listening. And every day and every week, I would get new insights around what that really meant. And the fruition of all of that, even though it didn't mean it's pieces of it didn't always make sense, is really what Anya came from. And I think that when we can really show up every single day in that place of service, of asking, how can we be conduits to creating a better world and a better just state of being, then the pieces start to naturally unfold. And we naturally start to let go of all of these things that maybe weren't serving us, and naturally start to move into more alignment with who we really are and where we're meant to go. So my invitation for you is to really ask yourself, where in your life are you playing small? Where in your life can you cultivate more curiosity, more consciousness around your choices? And where can you really shift from a state of being just driven by all of the things that you think you should be doing, and really start to ask that question of, how can I uniquely be of service? How can I uniquely show up and be in alignment with who I know I really am? And have grace for yourself, that knowing that you're not always going to get it right, and that there are going to be a number of trials and tribulations and starts and stops, but that's really the beauty of the journey of life. It's not meant to be a straight line. Paths aren't linear, and that when we can just continue to take that deep breath and to sit back and allow ourselves to enjoy the journey, that's really what creates a meaningful life. So I'm going to close by referencing a stat, or really a quote, from Breanna Rae. She is the woman who wrote the top 5 regrets of dying. And she says that the number one regret, the number one most common regret of people on their deathbed is, I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. Just let that one sink in. I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. How often are you living your life in accordance with what others expect from you? And how can you choose on a daily basis to live a life in greater alignment with who you really are? That is the essence of the self revolution. That is the essence of the Anya Institute. And I'm so excited to continue to be with you this season. We have so many incredible guests coming on that really span all of these different aspects of life. And I can't wait for you to hear their stories around their own self revolution. And I hope you will continue to be with me on this journey of my own self revolution. Have a great day. Namaste.